Hey everybody, my name is Alex with Hake Hardware, and in this video we are going to go over how to install Spaceport. So we're going to do this live following the Spaceport guide that is on Substack. I'll have a link to this in the video description. There are a few parts to this, but it's honestly overall pretty easy. We're not going to go with the advanced installation where you build your own Docker image. We're actually just going to pull the image from Docker Hub. I'm just going to bring up that real quick. Okay, so right now for Spaceport, we have two Docker images. We have Spaceport Cosmos, Spaceport Hubble. We're going to want to install Cosmos first, and Cosmos only needs to be installed on one computer, but Hubble will be installed on every computer that you have autonomous containers. And the reason why is because Hubble is the event scraper basically, and it needs access to your containers, so it needs to be installed alongside them with your other Docker containers for autonomous. So, and Cosmos is the front end, and you only need one front end, and it's the API also. So Hubble will be sending events to Cosmos, and Cosmos will be storing them in the database, but also displaying the front end. So we want Cosmos up and running before we deploy Hubble because Hubble needs Cosmos to send the events to. As soon as you deploy Hubble, it starts sending events to Cosmos. So the order of operations is definitely to get Cosmos installed. And you can install Cosmos alongside your autonomous containers, that's fine. It's just that anywhere that you want to have monitoring, it needs to be able to reach whatever computer you have Cosmos installed on because it has to be able to reach the API to send the events. So I'm going to jump back to the guide here. So you need to have autonomous running in Docker. That's a prerequisite. And the autonomous containers must be able to reach wherever you deploy Cosmos. Again, because they need to send the data to the API. And we're also going to be, so in addition to Cosmos and Hubble, we're going to be installing MySQL. And it's super easy. Like I was back and forth on using MySQL or just SQLite because it's a little bit easier of a system, but with Docker, setting up a MySQL instance is super easy. So everything is in the GitHub repository. So we have Spaceport Cosmos, Spaceport Hubble. If you saw the last video, I renamed these, so now they're actually correct. With Cosmos, you'll see there's actually a README down here that's filled out. It gives you an example of the stack file or Docker Compose that you would use. And then also if you want to do an advanced installation where you're able to change the root password, and if you need to change for some reason the URL or the IP address, you would need to just make sure you update this .env file here where it has your database URL. So it's hard coded and it's built into the image, which is why I have 172.990.101 here. And then in the docs, you're going to see that we assign that exact URL to MySQL on the Spaceport network, and you create this network here. So it sounds maybe complicated, but if you just want a simple installation and you're okay with just using password for password for root, which like there's not any sensitive data in this database. It's not like a production database that's deployed on a web server somewhere. It is deployed locally on your own network, and there's no sensitive information in here. So should be pretty easy. I mean, maybe in the future, no, even in the future, there's not going to be any sensitive information. So I really don't see a benefit, but for those of you who want to build your own image, you can update this password. Just make sure you also update it in the .env URL so that you have the right password here. So yeah, that's I guess I did go over the advanced installation a little bit, but It's super easy. So in here I have two hosts, Terminator, Johnny 5. Both of those are running autonomous. So if we check out my stack files here, I've got a pretty standard cluster with a node. And then for Johnny 5, I have just a farmer and a plotter connected to the cluster. So pretty standard setup if you have like two computers. Um, and Hubble and Cosmos work if you just have one. So initially we're only going to deploy it to Terminator and we'll have Cosmos and Hubble set up here. So let's go ahead and follow the instructions. So if we're coming down here, we want to create the Docker network, and actually let me just Spaceport network. I'm just going to remove it so that we go through all the steps here. And actually, I don't have Termius. So let me just add Termius so that I can show what I do there. There we go. Okay, so just clear this out. And let me make this bigger. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do, so you should already have Docker um, set up. So you should be able to do something like Docker PS to get all of your containers. It should be set up, and you should really have autonomous already running because this isn't really going to work if you don't have autonomous running. So you should already have autonomous running in Docker at this point, which means you must have Docker installed. And the first thing we're going to do, if we just remove that and we go back to the guide, you're going to want to copy this and then paste it into here. And you should see something like this, where you have this ID, which is, I think, can I do like Docker network ls? Yeah, okay, so we can see it ends in DD5, or I'm not sure, is it the beginning? Yeah, it's the beginning. So we have Spaceport network has been installed. And that's all we need to do in the terminal. So you can remove that, and let's go back to Portainer. And if you go into like networks, you should be able to also see Spaceport network in here, which is the 172.991. And we're going to need that because the next step is to copy this stack file or Docker compose and create a new stack. I just call it, I'm going to call it Cosmos. I called it Spaceport, but I want to be a little bit more specific. This is Cosmos, and you should only really update the version, which right now, I think the latest version is, I did a little hotfix here, but let me just double check. Yeah, the latest is 0.0.2-hotfix. So we will add hotfix to that. And then for MySQL, it's just pulling the MySQL image. And we can see Hake Hardware, Spaceport Cosmos, and everything should really be just left as default. And from this, you can just deploy the stack. And it's going to take a minute because it is kind of a larger image because we're doing Next.js, and it's got to do the Prisma migrate, and it's got to set up to MySQL and wait for it to be healthy. Okay, so we're all set up. I should delete this so I don't get confused. Cosmos, and both these are running, so we can see MySQL is all set up and ready for connections. And then Cosmos, it did 2 database migrations, and this happens every time. So if like I push out, version 0.0.3 and you update to that, and let's say I modify the schema and make changes, like I add a new table, it's going to run those migrations and then it's going to start up. And we can see it says localhost 3000, but because we are porting, where is it? 3000 to 9995. For me, I'm going to do 192.168.69.12.9955. So this Terminator computer is a separate computer. It's not my the computer that I'm on right now. So if I look in, that's where I'm hosting like, one sec. Okay, that's where I'm hosting like Portainer, and that's basically the IP address of a computer, that is a server across the room. So I'm using 169.168.69.12, and then I'm just putting the port 9955, and that's how I'm getting to Spaceport. So you can see we have no events. So latest events, there's nothing here. I haven't implemented any of these features yet, so that's why you can't click on any of them, but you can see the refreshing is already starting. So every 10 seconds, it refreshes and looks for the latest events. So as soon as we start processing events with Hubble, you're going to see they're going to show up here. So you already have basically deployed, um, it says Hubble, oh my gosh, I need to change this. As you can see, I did a few name changes here, but this should say Spaceport Cosmos. I'll update that in version 0.0.3. So just kind of ignore that for now. And this is the Next.js logo. I need to update it with like a logo for Spaceport. But that's easy, right? Like deploying Cosmos in MySQL is super easy. You could actually connect to this. Actually, I'll show you. So I use DataGrip. I'm on the free trial. I don't know if I'll go more than the free trial because it's probably more expensive than I want. But to do, let me add another window here. And you're welcome to like use DataGrip and let me see what window is this even? I actually don't know what window DataGrip is. Oh well. All right, I'm not going to show what. It's another window. Okay, I'm still getting used to this. I'm fully on Linux now. This is kind of a new experience, but for some reason, DataGrip isn't showing up, but I'll figure it out later. But you can actually connect to the database with DataGrip, and you can run queries if you want, like directly through DataGrip. So next we want to install Hubble. And to do that, we'll just basically create a new stack. So add stack. I'm going to call it, I'll just call it Hubble. And let's go back to the instructions here. And we're just going to copy this. And we'll paste this in here. So what we're doing is we're naming this container Spaceport Hubble. We have our latest image, and this is hotfix. And then we're putting our URL. So the same URL that I used to get here is the URL that I'm using for my API base URL. And that is mainly just because if we inspect the documents here, when this does its refresh or when it loads, the API is the base URL / API and then / events. And that's where it's doing a GET request for events. And it does that every 10 seconds. So that's how it's populating the events. So Hubble needs to know where to do the post requests and send the events. So that's basically why we have this here. So just make sure if your server is probably going to have a different API based URL than mine. And then network mode host, and we use this just because we want to use the host network so that Docker can get the IP address of the host, because in the future that's going to be part of the metadata that I use for Hubble. And that's it. So we should just be able to deploy the stack, check out Hubble. I can hear my computer steaming away now because it's pushing all of these events. And if we go to, we can already see the events starting to show up. So Nats connected, cache created. Every 10 seconds, you're going to see, because we're pushing like 12,000 events right now, it gets updated. So now we see finished piece cache synchronization. This is 8:29. It's currently 8:30. So next refresh. Um, Sometimes it takes a second to get the latest information. So just let it run, and you should see new stuff showing up. So now we're 8:30 at 6:47. It's 8 o'clock right now. So maybe one more refresh. Okay, maybe two more refreshes. 650, yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. So it's still populating events. I think there should be one more, but we'll give it a second. And what it looks like in Portainers, it's just pushing these events. So you can see they're just parsed logs basically. So we've got like, finished plotting sector successfully. It looks like this is the latest event and it happened at 1350, which if we minus 7 hours, it should be 650. 650. Yeah, so this is the latest event. Now, if this event was within the last hour, it would have a little new tag up here. And that way, if you just have this thrown up on a screen somewhere, you can see like a new tag if new events or events that happen within the last hour. And unfortunately, this is like the entirety of what Spaceport does right now. It basically gives you the last 5 events. And in the future, this event is going to be a little bit smaller and pushed off to the side here. And we're going to have, like if a farm is being plotted, you'll see like farm activity. You'll see, a lot. It's going to be more like a dashboard. So for now, this is all I have. But I wanted to get everything set up and get it out there so I could start getting feedback basically on, what I need to add and what I can improve. But overall, it's going to be a very clean, very simple website where we'll have, all of the information that you could possibly get from your autonomous ecosystem. And I do want to make a few notes here. So you see Terminator Plotter. This is showing up because we're using labels. And I recommend you do this before you deploy Cosmos and Hubble, is set your labels. So if I go into Portainer and I go to my stacks and I go to autonomous editor, I'm using these labels com.spaceport.name Terminator autonomous node. You can see Terminator controller, and that's my controller because I'm running the controller here. I have the cache. So I'm giving these friendly names. If you don't do this, it's going to use just the container name, which you can't make it as like human reader uh, readable. So I definitely recommend using these labels. And you should make these unique, or else when um, you're looking at these, if you have two of them both named Terminator Plotter, it's going to be really confusing because you're not going to know which one is doing what. Now we do have like associated with the name, we could also display the container ID, but that's like really confusing because then you got to like know what container ID goes to what. It's not great. Okay, so let's really quickly now deploy it on Johnny 5. Now Johnny 5 has a lot more space, so there's probably more recent events going on here. So let's do stacks. We'll add a stack. We'll call it Hubble, and it's literally just, again, copy pasting this into Johnny 5. And the base URL and everything is the same, and we just deploy the stack. And now if we go into Hubble, we can see that it is getting logs and it's starting to deploy all of these updates, which there's not a whole lot going on here. It looks like, actually, you know what? I didn't do the hotfix, which is why there's not a whole lot going on. Just give it a second. It actually was deploying logs. The logs that it did show were like there was kind of like an error with them. So this should be much different looking. I kind of messed it up because I deployed it twice, but so you can see if for some reason you deploy Hubble again, like let's say I delete it and I deploy it again, um, it's going to detect any duplicate events that are sent. So if an event with the same event time and the data is just the actual like information that it scrapes, and if it takes this event time and they're the same, then it's going to skip that event because it's likely a duplicate. So just a side note there, but let's go into Hubble. Okay, so we do have like more recent ones, but they're not within the last hour, so it's not going to give us the new badge. But you can see we have Johnny 5 Farmer and we have Terminator Plotter. So you can see that replotting was complete for this farmer, and you can see that it was actually Terminator Plotter that was plotting for this farm, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's interesting information. We're going to have a lot more interesting information here and on all the different tabs. So stay tuned for updates, but you can see just how easy it is to install everything. And there's going to be a lot more features. If there's anything you want to see, definitely comment on this video or open an issue in GitHub or reach me on the sub autonomous. I keep saying subspace still. The autonomous Discord. I'm on there. Send me a message. I definitely don't mind, or tag me and I'll respond eventually. But that's it for Spaceport. Hopefully you get some use out of it. I promise there's going to be a lot more features coming. And if you have any issues or there's any problems with installing it, please let me know. It's kind of all new, so I expect there to be maybe some errors. But that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.